Welcome back to Tales from the Long Box, where we journey deep into the long boxes, unearthing the classics, hidden gems, and just plain strange issues of the comic universe. It's October, and you know what that means. It's spooky time. What a better way to celebrate than explore some of the best spooky or Halloween-themed issues. So from now until Halloween, that's precisely what I plan to do. Mummies and ghouls, ghosts and goblins gather around and get comfortable as we find out what tale of terror clawed its way out of its final resting place tonight. The story I decided to cover this time is from What If, Volume 1, Issue 24. What if Wolverine had become the Lord of Vampires? This issue came out in 1991 and is actually an alternate story to one that took place within the X-Men comics at the time. This is explained to us at the beginning of the issue by Watsu the Watcher. He talks about how in X-Men number 159, Storm was under the influence of Dracula, and only with help from Kitty Pryde was she able to defeat his brainwashing and save her friends. Well, in an alternate reality, that didn't happen, and Dracula was able to turn Storm completely. Without Storm's intervention, Dracula is able to kill Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Wolverine. We see days later, they return as members of Dracula's undead army. At first, we see only 2 of them have risen. So Dracula is like, where's the one called Wolverine? Vampire Wolverine then just pops out of the woods, and Dracula realizes that Wolverine is different than the other 2, and that he still has his free will. So Wolverine starts being all sassy and challenges Dracula to a fight. Dracula lunges at Wolverine, but Wolverine turns himself into a mist and then into a wolf. So Logan is now a talking wolf, and he says that he likes the sound of the title Lord of Vampires, and he tells Dracula that he should transfer it to him and go on a long vacation in Transylvania. Dracula obviously doesn't agree, and turns himself into a bat creature. They begin to throw down. Wolverine is able to bite Dracula on the neck, and this causes Drac to turn back to human form. Wolverine then pops his claws, and then we see Dracula's head bouncing through the forest after Wolverine has cut it off. After he kills Dracula, Wolverine assumes control over the other vampires, including Storm, Nightcrawler, and Colossus. Wolverine is even more aggressive of a leader than Dracula was. He and his minions start by attacking and converting other mutants. First, starting with the New Mutants. They then target Magneto, the Hellfire Club, Freedom Force, and the Morlocks. Only after all mutants have been converted or killed permanently do they start to attack humans. We see at first, nobody really believes that it's actually vampires that are doing the killings. We then shift to Wolverine, who is sitting on a throne in his lair, and he is consulting with 2 mutants, Mystique and Destiny. If you're not familiar with Destiny, she is a mutant who has been a member of the Brotherhood. She's been around and done lots of other things. She's usually always paired up with Mystique. They even have a relationship and are married in some comics. But anyways, she has the power to see the future. There are limitations though. The further into the future she looks, the less likely she is correct. So if she were to look and see what was going to happen tomorrow, it's almost certain that it will happen. But if it was something that was like years or tens of years away, it's not as likely because of all the varying factors and things that could change before those events happen. Destiny tells Wolverine his only real threat is Doctor Strange, because he owns the Darkhold. Darkhold is an ancient magical book that gives its user control over all the dark arts. The first vampire was even created using this book. It has a really long, complicated history. Maybe I'll even do a video on it sometime. But the important part for this story is that the book contains what's called the Montesi formula. In the 616 universe, Doctor Strange was able to use this formula to rid the entire Earth of vampires, at least for a time. That's why this book is such a threat to Wolverine and his minions. Nightcrawler points out that Doctor Strange's sanctum is too well guarded with magical spells for direct attack on Strange. Wolverine tells him that there is more than one way to skin a magical cat and that he knows just the person for the job. Doctor Strange is then flying through the streets of New York. He's thinking to himself about how the city is like a ghost town, and that these new vampire attacks seem different than Dracula's usual MO. He then suddenly senses a strong presence of vampiric activity using his Eye of Agamotto. The eye directs him into a dark building and down a set of stairs. He looks around and all he can see is a small red light. The light approaches him and he realizes it is the gym of Sidorak. He's about to fortify his protective spells, but he is too slow, and we see the Juggernaut run straight into Doctor Strange, the blow breaking his back. Punch that is followed by the Juggernaut breaks his neck. Doctor Strange then dies, with the last thing he sees being the crazed fang face of the vampire-infected Juggernaut. Juggernaut then takes Strange's body back with him to the lair. Wolverine tells him to throw the body to the crocodiles so that it is completely destroyed so it can't come back as a vampire. He then reveals his plan. While not able to get where the Darkhold is because of the wards and protective spells of the Sanctum Sanctorum, they can watch the place and make sure nobody else can get to it either. So Wolverine and all his forces attack New York all at once. Even all of the superheroes there are defeated. Some are chosen to be a part of Wolverine's new army, including Spider-Man, Hulk, Moon Knight, and a bunch of other villains. There are others he makes sure will not become vampires. Whether that's because he thinks they're too dangerous or might be a threat to him, it doesn't really clarify. It even says that even his underlings aren't sure why he picks who he picks. It is then that the US government decides that they will quarantine New York. They use the National Guard to protect anybody coming in and out. We also see some other countries talking about how they don't want to allow Americans into their countries anymore because of the threat of the vampires. So we now found out that though Doctor Strange's body is dead, his spirit is still alive, and it is in the astral plane at this point. He is greeted by his old master, the Ancient One. He tells Strange that he needs to find a human that he can use as a tool to help complete his mission, to rid the world of this vampire curse. So he is then transported back to Earth, and he's floating around, and he finds these two men in black masks. And they're talking to each other. They're basically humans that are aspiring vampires. Shots ring out, and one of the men is dropped to the ground. Doctor Strange looks up at the building across the street, and we see one of our friends that we've previously just recently talked about, the Punisher. It is at this point that Doctor Strange decides that this is a sign that this is the person he's supposed to find. And it kind of makes sense. He says to himself, if anyone is going to be able to survive vampiric hell, basically that's going on here, it's going to be the Punisher. So in his spirit form, he enters Frank Castle's mind and he's talking to him. And this part is pretty rad. All of a sudden, we see Punisher is wearing Doctor Strange's cape of levitation and his eye of Agamotto. Doctor Strange tells him about his plan to use the Darkhold to destroy all vampires, but warns Punisher that it could cost him his soul. Punisher tells him he lost all that the day he lost his family. So they both roll up to Strange's house. As soon as he arrives, he is attacked by some of the lesser minions guarding the Sanctum Sanctorum. After they are taken out, we see a group of Vampire, X-Men, and Juggernaut emerge from the shadows and attack the Punisher. However, the Punisher is able to easily dodge their attacks using the Cloak of Levitation, and then uses a silver grenade and silver bullets to take out both Nightcrawler and Cyclops. Storm then turns herself into a bat monster and charges at Frank. But he is able to grapple her and tear off her wings since he has come prepared and has worn special silver-lined gloves. Colossus gets angry because his friends were just killed, and then he taunts the Punisher, telling him how bullets won't pierce his skin. That's when the Punisher uses a water gun full of holy water on Colossus, which burns and melts his metal flesh. The Juggernaut then tries to hit Frank behind, but the Punisher dodges his attack. Juggernaut grabs Frank's hands and is about to crush him, but at the last moment, we see the Eye of Agamotto activates and shoots a beam of energy that blows the Juggernaut up. I'm guessing that maybe becoming a vampire made Juggernaut weaker against the light. This could explain why this takes him out, while other times you've seen him shrug off way stronger attacks. Anyways, with all the vampires guarding the Sanctum out of commission, the Punisher starts to head into the Sanctum. But before he can do that, he's interrupted by Wolverine with a flash of light and black smoke. And maybe it's just me here, but I think Wolverine looks pretty rad with the cape. It's the first time I've seen it. I think the gold skull belt buckle is a little tacky, but I'm a big fan of the cape. So Wolverine pops his claws and instantly uses them to remove the cape and the eye from Punisher. He does this because he knows that is the Punisher's biggest advantage right now. Anyways, Frank pulls out a machine gun and tries to shoot him, emptying the clip, but Logan is too fast and turns himself into a mist. So the Punisher is out of ammo at this point, so he throws the weapon aside and he draws out a silver knife. And it's one of those, that's not a knife, this is a knife. It's huge. But he's also talks about how it has been blessed by a priest. So they continue to fight. It's a really cool fight. The whole thing is really action-packed. There's a lot of back and forth. Doctor Strange is also conversing with Frank and giving him advice while they are fighting. And then eventually Wolverine is thrown inside the Sanctum. And that's when the spells and wards activate and weaken him, which Doctor Strange says that if it was a lesser vampire, probably would have killed him. But since it was, Wolverine, he survives that. So it kind of evens the playing field a little bit more. Wolverine gets stabbed and falls to the floor, and he's starting to bleed. The
Punisher then swings back his blade for the final strike.
But as he is swinging, the vampiric Kitty Pryde phases up through the floor and becomes solid and begs them to stop fighting. However, it is too late to stop his swing. The Punisher even says, couldn't stop. And he ends up just like slicing straight through her neck and cutting her head clean off. Now, if you know anything about the relationship between Logan and Kitty Pryde, it's that they were very close. Logan is almost like a second father to her. So one thing you don't want to do, piss Wolverine off, is to hurt Kitty Pryde. Wolverine instantly shoves both his claws into Frank's torso, killing him. The Punisher is done. This is when we see Wolverine is mourning. He's just screaming. And he's blaming Strange and Punisher for her death. The spirit of Doctor Strange then leaves the Punisher's body. He says that it was Wolverine's fault, that he was responsible for all of his friends' death, and he tells him how he knows that Logan is still inside, fighting against the darker side of his vampiric curse. Wolverine is then reminded of those who are important to him, his time in Alpha Flight and his love for Jean Grey. Strange says that he has a choice, and only he can make it. Logan struggles, but chooses the light, and Doctor Strange tells him to read from the Darkhold to find the Montesi formula. With Strange's help, Wolverine begins to read, and as he's doing this, he's basically falling apart. It's suffering for him to even touch the book. It hurts him. And then we see that as he's starting to get closer to the end of the spell, that all the other vampires have been starting to turn to ash. And then at the very last, he himself has turned to ash.
And that's the end of all the vampires.
We are then shown Doctor Strange's spirit leaving the Earth to travel the cosmos with the spirit of the Ancient One. While this is happening, Uatu the Watcher talks about how this world now faces a lot of troubles, but that he still believes that it still has hope. And that's the end of the issue. So yeah, this issue is a lot of fun. It has some neat stuff in it. I like seeing all the different characters that are vampires. Seeing them as vampires is fun. I like part with the Juggernaut. That was brutal, but pretty interesting. Yeah, I just like the overall vibes of it. I liked seeing the opposite of what happened with Storm, the original X-Men issue. I thought that was cool too. If you're into vampires or just really any like 90s comics at all, you should definitely check this one out. It's a good one. It's fun. It's great for Halloween, I think. And yeah, so like, comment, subscribe. If you can, that'd be great. I'm still pretty new at this. Shoot me some comments too. Let me know what you want to hear about. I've got a couple more spooky ones lined up for Halloween, and then after that we'll just see what happens. But yeah, so if you have any comments about what you want to see, or if there's something you are curious about, just let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. I forgot one thing. I really don't like how this issue just trolls you with the cover. There's no Jean Grey or Phoenix in this issue. Like, she's mentioned, but it's only in passing. It's not like a big thing. They make it on the cover like that's gonna be something that'll be inside. I mean, I bet it sold a lot of copies just because of the cover.
But I would have liked to see it. Yeah, that's all I got to say. So, again, I'll catch you.